Take a good look at the person sitting next to you. Lean in just a little and study the tiny movements on their face. Notice that small flash of tension in the jaw. Watch where their eyes go and how often they blink. Look at the small ways they shift in their seat. In the science of reading human behavior, one lesson shows up again and again. The most dangerous person in any room is never the loudest one. It is never the person demanding all the attention, showing off their status, or filling the air with stories about how important they are. We have been taught to see the narcissist as the ultimate predator in relationships. But the truth is, they are easy to predict. They run on a repetitive cycle of needing praise, wanting control, and boosting their own ego. If you know what to look for, a narcissist is an open book written in giant, glowing letters. Loud, fragile, and completely shaped by their own deep insecurities. However, there is a hidden variable in this equation, a silent observer. We call them the empath. For months or even years, the empath sits quietly in the corner of that relationship. To anyone not paying attention, and especially to the blind eye of the narcissist, this person looks weak. They look like they're just going along with whatever happens. They take the hits, they forgive the wrongs, and they always offer yet another chance. The narcissist looks at this behavior and registers total submission. They believe they have won. They think they have found a permanent source of energy they can drain whenever they want. But here is what they fail to understand. While they were busy playing their loud, childish games, the empath was quietly building a complete psychological profile of them. The empath was not just absorbing pain. They were gathering intelligence. They understand exactly what makes that narcissist tick. They know the specific childhood wound that forced that mask to grow in the first place. They know the exact words that will shatter the narcissist's fragile sense of self. They hold the master keys to the entire psychological castle the narcissist has built. And then, eventually, a line gets crossed. The emotional circuit breaker finally snaps. What happens when the person who feels everything suddenly decides to feel absolutely nothing for you? The temperature drops instantly. The soft, accommodating mirror the empath used to provide now turns into a cold, razor-sharp blade. If you have ever seen a truly fed-up empath turn their focus toward a narcissist, you have witnessed a masterclass in psychological demolition. And that is exactly what we are about to break down right now. Stay with me, because the loudest monster in the room is about to meet the quiet architect of their own undoing. Now let us talk about human architecture. Every person has a psychological tripwire, a point from which they can never go back. When we study human behavior, we do not look at what a person does when they are comfortable and happy. We look at what happens when their main operating system is forced to adapt to extreme levels of stress. For decades, popular psychology has painted the narcissist as the puppet master. They twist your words, shower you with fake love, then freeze you out, all to get their way. They control the story. They look like the ones holding all the cards. But from a behavioral standpoint, the narcissist has one massive fatal flaw. They are entirely predictable. A narcissist is a machine that runs on external validation. If you cut off that fuel, the machine starts to sputter. If you feed the machine, it hums along. They rely completely on the people around them to tell them who they are. The empath is completely different. The empath operates on a very high level of sensory intake. They pick up changes in the way someone speaks, changes in how wide their pupils get, and patterns in their breathing, often without even realizing it. They are like human radar dishes. When an empath is in a relationship with a narcissist, they spend every waking hour mapping out that narcissist's mind. They know the exact distance between the narcissist's pride and their hidden shame. But human beings can only take so much toxicity before the basic instinct for survival takes over and overrides the need to be polite and compliant. When a narcissist pushes an empath past that final invisible tripwire, something truly extraordinary happens in the brain. It is a phenomenon we can call the activation of cold empathy. Normally, an empath uses warm empathy. They feel with you. They genuinely experience your pain. But when the emotional circuit breaker clicks off because they need to protect themselves, the feeling stops. but the data collection does not. The radar dish is still completely active, but it is no longer attached to a heart. It is now connected to a cold, calculating, analytical mind. Suddenly, the empath sees the narcissist with terrifying, crystal-clear accuracy. The illusion is gone. The charm does not work anymore. The manipulation bounces off them like a pebble hitting a bulletproof window. So why is this state even more dangerous than the narcissist? Here is the answer. First, there is the element of total imbalance. The narcissist has built their entire strategy on the assumption that the empath will always care. They expect tears, they expect defense, they expect the empath to beg. When the empath stops reacting entirely, the narcissist's whole playbook becomes useless. You cannot manipulate a person who is looking at you like you are just a specimen under a microscope. And here is the part most people miss. That calm is not peace. It means the war has already been decided. Second, there is the database. A narcissist attacks with broad, generic cruelty. They call you crazy. They call you ungrateful. It is clumsy. It is a blunt instrument. But when a fed-up empath decides to speak, they do not use blunt instruments. They use a scalpel. They know the exact phrase delivered with a completely flat voice that will bypass the narcissist's armor and hit the raw, bleeding wound underneath. They do not yell. They do not scream. They look the narcissist dead in the eyes with zero emotional reaction in their body language, and they whisper the one truth the narcissist has spent their whole life running away from. It is a psychological assassination. When a narcissist realizes that their target can see right through the mask and is completely unbothered by what is hiding behind it, the narcissist experiences what we call a psychic death. Their authority evaporates. Their confidence collapses. They are left exposed and naked in front of the very person they thought they were controlling. The narcissist plays a game of checkers based on ego. The fed-up empath plays a game of chess based on a perfect, flawless psychological map of their opponent. So never mistake a person's kindness or gentleness for a lack of claws. The most dangerous people on this planet are not the ones who constantly look for conflict. They are the ones who tolerate it, endure it, map it out, and then cleanly, quietly bring it to an end. Let us isolate and take apart that baseline illusion, because understanding this dynamic requires us to look past the surface noise of everyday interaction and examine the raw behavioral data. When a narcissist meets an empath, they are not just looking at a partner. Their subconscious is running an assessment algorithm. They look at the empath's high level of patience, their constant adjustments to accommodate others, and their willingness to deal with emotional discomfort just to keep the peace. In the narcissist's mental framework, this behavior is immediately labeled as weakness. Their internal profiling system translates a high ability to tolerate things into a lack of personal boundaries, or even worse, an inability to defend themselves. This is the fundamental catastrophic error in the narcissist's behavioral pattern. They look at a person who is choosing peace and they assume that person does not have the capacity for war. This miscalculation creates what we call a baseline illusion. The narcissist establishes a psychological baseline for the empath that is completely false. They get used to a person who responds to criticism by looking inward, who responds to hostility by trying to calm things down, and who responds to manipulation by trying even harder to make things work. Because this feedback loop stays the same over a long period, the narcissist develops an intense sense of security. They believe they have completely mapped out the entire terrain of the empath's mind. They truly believe they know exactly how far they can push, exactly how much weight the structure can handle, and exactly what kind of emotional reaction they can get at any given moment. To the narcissist, the empath becomes a highly readable and completely predictable asset. They rely on this predictability to keep their own fragile ego balanced. They use the empath's steady, forgiving nature as a mirror to reassure themselves that they are in control and superior. But what the narcissist is actually seeing is not weakness. It is an incredible display of emotional control and resilience. The empath is not staying silent because they are afraid. They are staying silent because they are processing the environment at a depth the narcissist cannot even begin to understand. While the narcissist is busy playing out their superficial power games, the empath's highly tuned sensory system is quietly recording every small facial expression, every change in tone, every lie, and every manipulation tactic. The narcissist thinks they are the predator operating in secret, completely blind to the fact that they are actually operating inside an interrogation room with a two-way mirror. Every time the narcissist moves the goalposts, throws a fit, or tries to twist reality, they are giving away valuable data about their own internal mechanics. They are showing exactly what triggers their anger, exactly what feeds their ego, and exactly where their deepest insecurities are hidden. The narcissist behaves with absolute recklessness because they are blinded by the baseline illusion. They believe their target is permanently locked into a state of submission, completely unaware that their target is actually putting together a comprehensive psychological profile of them. Every single day, they mistake the empath's patience for a permanent license to exploit, never realizing that this patience has a clear expiration date. They do not understand that they are actively burning through the very grace that protects them from the truth of what they actually are. When that line is finally crossed, we witness a profound neurological and behavioral shift, which we can call the cognitive snap. To understand this moment, you have to look at the human brain as if it were an electrical grid. For months or years, the empath's emotional circuits have been running at maximum capacity, absorbing a level of voltage that would melt an ordinary person's system. They have been filtering the narcissist's toxicity through their own emotional processor, constantly trying to find some deeper meaning, trying to offer grace, and trying to heal things that were never meant to be healed. But every grid has a built-in safety mechanism. When the narcissist pushes past that final invisible boundary, the empath's emotional circuit breaker clicks off. It is an instant systemic shutdown designed for nothing but pure psychological survival. In a fraction of a second, the empath's brain shifts its main resources away from the emotional centers and floods the thinking part of the mind with absolute clear-headed focus. The warmth that once defined them just evaporates, and the temperature in the room drops to absolute zero. This is the exact moment the person the narcissist thought was an asset transforms into a serious threat. The narcissist, who is completely blind to internal shifts until they show up on the outside, suddenly feels like the world has rewritten its rules without any warning. They're used to dealing with an emotional counterpart, someone they could easily provoke, make sad, or manipulate with guilt. They have an entire playbook dedicated to managing the empath's tears and anxiety. But when the snap occurs, the narcissist is suddenly looking into the eyes of a total stranger. The emotional hostage has left the building, and an analytical evaluator has taken their place. The empath's posture changes. The head tilts just a little. The blinking slows down. The small expressions of concern that were always there vanish completely, replaced by a terrifyingly flat, objective gaze. It is the look of a scientist calmly observing a microscopic organism under a lens. The narcissist tries to launch their usual weapons, perhaps a sudden burst of rage, a calculated guilt trip, or a familiar story designed to confuse you. But the behavior simply bounces off. The empath's mirror is no longer absorbing the impact. Instead, it is reflecting it back with cold, clinical precision. What makes this shift so dangerous is that the empath does not become aggressive. They become precise. When the emotional noise shuts down, the massive amount of psychological data the empath has collected over the entire relationship suddenly organizes itself into a perfect, weaponized map. The analytical mind takes total control of the intelligence report. The empath sees every lie the narcissist ever told, every manipulation tactic they ever used, and every deep-seated insecurity they tried so hard to hide behind their grand show of importance. The narcissist, sensing a sudden loss of control, typically escalates. Or they try desperately to get any kind of emotional reaction to prove they still hold power. They want a scream, a cry, a defense, anything that fits the baseline they established. But the fed-up empath offers nothing but absolute unnerving stillness. They are no longer participating in the dynamic. They are analyzing it in real time, simply waiting for the exact moment to deploy the truth. The narcissist spent the entire relationship treating the empath like a battery to be drained, entirely unaware that the battery was actually a bomb. By pushing just a millimeter too far, they have personally triggered the very mechanism that will dismantle their entire reality. To understand the sheer magnitude of this threat, we have to look at the massive data gap that has been quietly growing throughout the relationship. In the world of behavioral profiling, the person with the most accurate data always wins the engagement. For months or perhaps even years, the narcissist has been operating under the assumption that they are the only one studying the target. They use their clumsy, repetitive manipulation tactics to test boundaries and find levers they can pull to maintain control. But while the narcissist was playing those superficial games, the empath was unconsciously running a massive, deep-level intelligence gathering operation. Because an empath possesses a highly acute, hyper-alert nervous system, they do not just hear words. They register the precise frequency of a voice, the micro-tremors in the hands, the sudden shift in eye contact, and the exact moments where the narcissist's external confidence fails to match their internal reality. The empath has been sitting quietly in the corner of that relationship, absorbing every single piece of behavioral data the narcissist has dropped. The narcissist is entirely unaware that they have been leaving a massive trail of psychological breadcrumbs. Every time they threw a theatrical tantrum, every time they desperately bragged about an achievement, or every time they reacted with crazy levels of rage to a minor slight, they were handing the empath the blueprints to their internal architecture. They were exposing the exact location of their deepest, rawest childhood wounds. They were showing the empath precisely what they are afraid of, what makes them feel small, and what specific illusions they require to keep their fragile ego from falling apart. The empath now possesses an exhaustive, hyper-detailed psychological map of the narcissist's entire inner world. They know the narcissist better than the narcissist knows themselves, because the narcissist is trapped in a permanent state of denial and self-delusion. Meanwhile, the empath has been observing the unvarnished reality from a position of profound, hyper-focused proximity. When the empath finally detaches and enters that cold, analytical state, this massive database is instantly unlocked and brought online. The narcissist suddenly finds themselves facing an opponent who does not need to guess where the vulnerabilities are. The empath does not need to throw wild emotional insults or engage in loud, chaotic arguments. They have the exact coordinates of the narcissist's deepest shame. They know exactly which pillars are holding up that elaborate artificial facade, and they know the exact sequence of truths required to bring the entire structure crashing down. This data advantage means that while the narcissist is still trying to use outdated, generic manipulation tactics, the empath is operating with surgical precision. They see through every deflection, every projection, and every lie in real time, mapping it instantly against the massive backlog of behavioral evidence they have collected. The narcissist is completely outmatched, standing exposed before a silent observer who holds the keys to their own psychological undoing, waiting in total calm to deploy the exact data that will shatter the illusion of control forever. Now let us strip away the clinical terminology for a moment and look at the actual mechanics of human manipulation. Specifically, we should look at the concept of weaponized empathy. For a long time, you have been told that empathy is a soft, gentle trait. You have been told it is just an emotion, a warm feeling of compassion that makes someone kind and giving. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of the mechanism. Empathy is not just a feeling. Empathy is a highly advanced cognitive radar system. It is the raw biological capacity to accurately decode the internal emotional state, the motivations, and the psychological architecture of another human being. When an empath is healthy and invested, that radar system is hooked up to a heart, which results in kindness. But when the cognitive snap occurs and the emotional circuit breaker flips, that radar system does not shut down. It uncouples from the heart and plugs directly into a cold, ruthless intellect. The radar becomes a targeting system. This is the birth of cold empathy, and it is arguably the most lethal psychological weapon on the planet. The narcissist has spent their entire life constructing an elaborate defensive fortress made of mirrors, lies, and inflated self-importance to protect their deeply fractured, fragile core self. Ordinary people look at that fortress and see strength. They try to attack it with anger, screaming, or logical arguments, all of which the narcissist's armor easily deflects and even uses as fuel. But a fed-up empath operating with cold empathy does not attack the fortress from the outside because they already possess the exact psychological coordinates of the narcissist's mind. They are already inside the walls. They understand human nature so profoundly that they do not just see the narcissist's behavior, they see the exact pathetic fear driving that behavior. They see the terrified, wounded child pulling the levers behind the giant roaring projection of the ego. Weaponized empathy means the empath can now use this total understanding of the narcissist's internal mechanics to dismantle them with terrifying surgical precision. They know exactly how the narcissist constructs their self-worth, which means they know exactly where to cut to make that self-worth bleed out. They know the precise sequence of words that will cut past the narcissist's defenses and strike the raw, unhealed shame underneath. The narcissist is used to people reacting to their provocations with emotional chaos, which allows them to play either the victim or the victor. But cold empathy strips the narcissist of this script. The empath does not look at them with hatred. They look at them with an icy, devastating neutrality. They deliver a flawless, objective analysis of the narcissist's deepest flaws directly to their face with zero emotional resonance in their voice. It is a clinical dissection of a personality disorder performed in real time. The narcissist's carefully constructed facade is systematically unraveled thread by thread, not by a loud enemy, but by a quiet architect who understands the precise blueprint of their prison and knows exactly how to make the walls cave in on them. When we look at the ultimate conclusion of this behavioral showdown, we find ourselves observing the silence of a supernova. It is the quiet, terrifying execution that renders a master manipulator completely powerless. In the standard way we think about human conflict, we expect the escalation to be loud. We expect theatrical displays of dominance, slamming doors, raised voices, and chaotic energetic exchanges. This is the playground where the narcissist has spent their entire life training. They thrive in the noise. They know how to use chaos, how to manipulate a loud argument, and how to use someone else's visible rage as proof of their own innocence or superiority. But when the fed-up empath reaches the end of their tolerance, they do not enter the arena of noise. They step completely outside of it. They initiate a level of silence that is not just the absence of sound. It is a vacuum that sucks all the oxygen, power, and validation directly out of the narcissist's environment. To a behavioral profiler, this absolute quiet is the most dangerous signal a human being can emit. It represents the complete and total ending of investment. The empath has stopped trying to explain, stopped trying to defend, and stopped trying to find a resolution. And in that silence, the narcissist finally comes face to face with the one thing they can never control, the truth. So the next time someone mistakes your kindness for weakness, remember this: you are not a doormat, you are a dormant storm. And the quietest people in the room are often the ones who see everything.